questions for Coach. Obviously, this weather playing havoc with practice plans.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we'd love to be able to go outside and practice on our home field, but the weather's just not cooperating with us right now. And again, you can't control the weather. There's no need to worry about it. We were able to get a great practice in today. We spent some time in the cages, got a lot of really good swings, quality work in the cages, and came in and did plenty of fundamental work here in the indoor facility. Lucky that we have an indoor facility that we can come into in inclement weather and get a good workout in. So overall, we got a great practice in today. We'd love to be on the field, but it is what it is, and we just move forward.
Do you have to take Stapo and ask him for permission to use it?
Yeah, we have a way of going about doing that, and the football staff is great to work with. As long as it's available, they always let us come over here and get a workout in, so we really appreciate it.
The guys appreciate the true hops.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're playing on the turf. I mean, there's no bad hops on the turf, so it's pretty easy to catch a ground ball on the turf.
When you were getting ready for Austin Peay a few weeks ago, you had to call around the Ohio Valley to find out about them and probably watch some video of them. Did you see Morehead State in that process, or maybe inadvertently gain information on them now that's helpful to you for this weekend?
No, we watched some video on Morehead, or I did. I watched some video on Morehead yesterday, just on their pitchers, just to just kind of see how they look, their tendencies, their arm slot, what their stuff looked like, just trying to gain some sort of familiarity with some of their starting pitchers. They're big and they're strong and they're physical and they have a lot of power. So that's one thing that you could take from watching some of their hitters. Overall, that's going to be the name of the game. Is we got to keep the ball in the ballpark. If we can do that, execute pitches, play good defense behind them, and limit their free passes, then we'll give ourselves a good chance. But they're a physical bunch.
Coach, you expecting Kier to play at all either Friday or at all this weekend?
We're just our big goal right now is just trying to get Kier to the point to where we can make a decision on whether he's going to be available or not. This was the second day in a row that he hit off the tee. We're hoping to be able to have him hit off of an arm, like batting practice or front toss, more of a moving ball tomorrow, which creates it's a little more exertion on his part to hit BP. So we got to see how he feels there first before we move into trying to make a decision as to whether he will be available for the weekend or not.
What about your pitching rotation? Got a thought process in mind there?
We're going to meet this afternoon. We've really, since the field was announced yesterday afternoon, we tried to get stats and try to figure out just what we feel like from a matchup standpoint would be best for us. So we're going to meet here, after this is over, and start discussing, okay, who do we want to try to match up with Morehead State, and how does that affect the rest of the weekend?
Chris said that this is the most motivated he's seen this team in the last 2 years. Do you think that that's true, and why?
That's a good question. I'm glad that he feels that way. I think it's been a group that has self-policed itself a lot more. I think that's one thing. I've probably coached less with this team than I've had to in the past, and I think that's a testament to them. Just their ownership for this year. They kind of run the club. Chris is one of those guys that's on our leadership council, along with Seth and Logan and a number of other guys. So they kind of run it. It's not as – I don't have to be as involved when it comes to motivation or direction. I think the guys kind of understand things now. So, I'm glad to hear that he feels that way because he's speaking for the team.
You didn't have Chris for the regional last year, and he's swinging a hot bat right now. Is that maybe the biggest difference with this team?
Well, I think anytime your best players are swinging the bat well, that's a good thing. So, if Seth and Logan and Chris, if those guys are hitting well, we're probably scoring a bunch of runs. Yeah, I'm glad that he's hot. He had a great week in Durham, and hopefully he can carry that momentum into this weekend.
Riley made an interesting point. He said the other night when you got tossed, it actually fired him up. And again, there's a big picture strategy to everything. In the emotion of the moment, maybe not, but is there kind of some rhyme to reason in those situations to send messages beyond just one to the umpire?
Well, I think in that situation, I wasn't necessarily trying to motivate or fire up our team. I felt a certain way and I let it be known. But again, I think players in general feel like when you stand up for them, they appreciate it. If you fight for them, they appreciate it. But as the head coach, also there's a fine line. You don't want to put yourself in a position, to be ejected or to hurt your ball club. So I certainly would not want to do that. But the guys did, feel like, I had their back, so to speak, and that I was fighting for them. But I always fight for them, and I think the guys will tell you that. Whether it had anything to do with how he pitched after that point, who knows? Try to do everything I can to protect our players first and foremost.
Coach, you said all year that you try not to put an emphasis on any one game or series. Is that kind of unavoidable for this weekend, and is it a challenge at all to keep these guys playing loose?
I don't think it is. Not from my standpoint. Nothing changes as far as our preparation this week as it would be any other week. You're going to look at different opponents and try to figure out what you feel like is the best matchup against them from a pitching standpoint. Who's their dangerous hitters? Who matches up good out of the bullpen against their lineup, and those kind of things. Those are the things that we look at. We look at the opponent, the strength and weaknesses, the split stats, lefty-righty, the matchup righty-lefty, who they use out of the bullpen, what are some moves that we may make later in the ball game. It's more about trying to manage against their club than anything else. But as far as the players go, it doesn't really change a whole lot for them.
Does any evaluation go into the fact that because of the weather forecast, you might have a delay and maybe which guy's a better starter who can come back after 45 minutes to an hour of a delay? Does that ever factor in?
It doesn't. It never factors in just because you can't control the weather. I've been in games where you have an 80% chance of rain and it never rains a drop. I've seen it where it's a 15% chance of rain and it floods. So you can't really focus on that too much. The big thing is when it does happen, and we all know it happens a lot this time of year as the weather heats up, that you run into thunderstorms and delays and things of that nature. You just have to know how to handle it when it happens. If you're in the middle of a game and they got to put the tarp on, what do you do with your starting pitcher? How long is that delay? That's an individual thing too. Some guys can handle it, some guys can't. Some guys get stiff, and once they get stiff, they can't go back out there. So a lot of it depends on the pitcher and what you do to keep that pitcher loose, and how long the delay is as far as trying to make those decisions.
If you had to estimate how many times from fall ball to now you've seen Seth in the cages after hours, what would that number be?
Oh gosh. Well, a lot. I would say in the fall it was almost every day. Almost every day. Typically, the guys go into the weight room after practice. Okay, we work out in the weight room after practice, and a lot of times I'm one of the last ones leaving out of there. And as I'm walking out, a lot of times I see the lights on in the cage. So that's when I know when guys are in there or not. And when I see the lights on in the cage, then I know Seth's down there hitting by himself. And, sometimes I'll walk down to the cage just to make sure things are picked up and locked up before I leave. And Seth's still in there hitting, so I'll stick my head in there and see him in there, and I leave him alone. That's their time. But Seth's, I don't know if anybody in my time as a head coach has spent more time when it comes to working on their swing. And if there's a way, Seth will find it. I think that's one thing that I've learned about Seth over my 3 years with him, is if there's a way that he's going to be successful, he's going to find that way. He's a very driven young man. So he pretty much went down there every day. Regardless if he was 4 for 4 or 0 for 4, Seth's going to be in the cages after practice on his own hitting.
Do you worry at all about MLB draft distractions this time of year? Not just with him, but with all these guys?
Well, it's tough not to. It's tough not to think about it as much as, the players who are going to be involved in those discussions, as much as they try not to, it is a distraction. I just think that's natural. But I will say this, the one thing that has impressed me with our group of guys is our draft eligible players have had good years. And oftentimes you're going to find that guy or two that sometimes they don't because of the amount of pressure that they put on themselves in their draft year. But our draft year guys have had great years. That says a lot about their mental toughness and their preparation and their ability to handle not only playing for us and trying to help us win games, but also trying to play for scouts.
I would suppose that moving it later wouldn't be good for Major League Baseball.